what I would like to do right now is go into an issue that seems to be taking up all the headlines, and that's the Russians are coming. I mean, you could title it. You could title it something to the effect of lions and tigers and Russians. Oh my gosh! I mean, the hysteria that we're getting right now, that's coming out of the corporate press, is mind-boggling. It would be actually humorous if it wasn't for the fact that it's so dangerous. I mean, I remember this. I do remember back in the days when the Soviet Union still existed. And the left usually was trying to have the media present Russia as, it was the largest of the, you could say, states within the Soviet Union at that time. But they were trying to present Russia as, just regular everyday people that we should all, get to know. They're just like us. They may be communist, but, it's too dangerous for us to be saber-rattling and constantly, threatening war and these kinds of things. Well, now look at it now. Russia's no longer communist, okay? It is not communist. The Warsaw Pact doesn't exist anymore. There's still plenty of nukes. Okay, the Russians have enough nukes to destroy the world, I don't know how many times over, and the Americans do too. All right? But the thing is, now we have those same left that is saying, oh my gosh, the Russians are coming. We've got to do this and this and this, and maybe they may have helped out Donald Trump during the election, and, we need to retaliate because there's been hacking and there's been espionage and so forth. Well, the first thing I would say is this. I mean, there's no proof. Okay? And, that's something I've noticed about faith in people. All right? If you study cults. And you'll notice that the less proof there is to substantiate a claim from an organization, the more fervently the believers will promote it as fact. And anyone who questions it will be accused of heresy. Okay? And we're seeing that right now with the media. We really are. We are seeing this demonization. We are seeing all kinds of weird stories, innuendos. Okay? Innuendos. I've even noticed in my social media, some of the people that I have that are more liberal in my social media have been, one person put up this thing saying, do you stand with Trump and Putin, or do you stand with the patriotic people of the CIA? And I'm kind of thinking to myself, okay, this is interesting. That's something Obama did accomplish. Okay? Very interesting. That now you have the left is saying how much we should love the CIA and how much we should endorse war and force and these kinds and curtail speech. Have you ever dreamt that that would be the case? Okay, I have a lot of respect for old-style, traditional liberals. I had professors in college. I remember this one. Oh, we used to get in arguments all the time. But I got good grades in his class because we had mutual respect for one another and opinions. And I remember that, he would point out that the most important thing you had in a democracy was fair and open debate and discussion. And now we don't see that so much with the left. And that's really frightening, to be honest with you. Okay? When I'm seeing the left side with like Republicans like Lindsey Graham and John McCain, on issues, I think it's time. I mean, if someone had been in a coma for 15 years and suddenly woke up now, they would be like, whoa, what in the heck's going on here? I mean, this is stranger than that scene in the in this short story, The Butterfly Effect, when the guy steps on the butterfly, comes back to back to his own present time, and suddenly sees that the world's totally different. And, I think this would be kind of the same thing. Now, I'll illustrate something to you, though. I'll illustrate something to you that points out just where we're at. Now, the other day, there was a headline in the Washington Post. Okay, now you got to remember, most people don't read full articles. Most people scan articles. They read maybe the headline, a little bit of the first few paragraphs, and then they go on to another story. If you read, I can't remember where I heard this, but if you were to read every story in just a regular newspaper, it would take you a couple hours a day, and most people don't spend 2 hours a day reading through the newspaper completely. So, but here's the headline here. Russian operation hacked a Vermont utility, showing risk to U.S. electrical grid security, officials say. Now, in fairness, if you go to this story, Washington Post, Russian operation hacked a Vermont utility, showing risk to U.S. electrical grid security, officials say. There's an editor's note that they state right here, editor's note. An earlier version of this story incorrectly said that the Russian hackers had penetrated the U.S. electrical grid. Authorities say there is no indication of that so far. The computer at Burlington Electric that was hacked was not attached to the grid. And then you read a story a couple days later from the Washington Post. Russian government hackers do not appear to have targeted Vermont utilities, say people close to investigation. But you know what's interesting about this? Yes, they did retract it. They did come out and say, oops. But you know what? I looked up the original story and just changed, just looked up Vermont utility and, hacked. And there was a lot of people that took that. Okay, there was news organizations, there was bloggers, there were, it went out in social media. And I guarantee you, many of those people did not read the retraction story. Many people still believe that the Vermont, from my understanding, it was someone's laptop. Okay. It would be like if you work for a company and you've been surfing all over the internet and you've picked up some sort of malware on your computer and you go into work and they're checking because there's been a security breach or they're just checking to see if there's a security breach. And they find out that you have some malware that happens to be the same kind that, comes from some hostile country or whatever, and you don't even have any proof of that. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, and then you point to that hostile country or whatever, and you say it was part of a plot from that country. Okay? I don't think so. I really don't think so. Any more than those things you get in your email, from some Nigerian prince who's trying to find someone who will sponsor a bank account for him so he can share his money that he's escaping the country with, or some sort of story similar to that, is in any way or shape or form officially connected to the Nigerian government or people or country. Okay? The thing is that people are really, really fanning this whole narrative that the Russians are coming and that there's this need to really retaliate. Now, I'll say one thing, though. Julian Assange has come out and stated over and over and over and over and over again about the source of all of the WikiLeaks that originally started this whole question. And the thing is that he points out it was not the Russians. He has he's pointed out there's been people that have been close to this whole thing who have actually, there was one guy, some guy from Britain who had some sort of position at one time. I don't know, it was an ambassador or something, who said it was definitely not the Russians, that he knew the guy, or had met the guy who actually had something to do with it. So the thing is that we are getting this whole, I would say, witch hunt mentality. This is nothing like McCarthyism. McCarthyism was not even close to this hysteria. I mean, this is the closest thing to the Salem witch trials that I have seen in modern politics. Okay? Closest thing to the Salem witch trials, in which someone starts a rumor, and then someone else confirms that rumor and adds to it, and then someone else embellishes that, and then by the time you're done with it, no one even knows where the source of the rumor is, but yet everyone's convinced that they know the truth. Okay? That they're convinced that now we know that those pesky Russians or whoever it was absolutely, positively have done this to us. That they have come in. That they have interfered in our elections and so forth. Now, the thing about that is that I think Assange may be on to something when he says this is an attempt to discredit Trump. That maybe this, if you repeat these things over and over again, that people will automatically, when they hear Trump's name, will be like, oh yeah, he's the one that's working for Putin. And if Trump wants to do something to improve relations with Russia, it'll be, see, I told you so, that confirms it, there he is right there, he must be working with the KGB. Most people aren't aware that the Russian police that deal with security is called something totally different, FSB, I believe. But, they're still living in some sort of old James Bond movie with Scandinavian actresses playing beautiful Russian spies. So, anyway, the stakes here, I think, are just really too high to be thinking, it's not such a big deal. Because it's a huge deal. You're talking about the country that has the ability to annihilate all life on Earth. And we, of course, are the country also that has the ability to annihilate all life on Earth. And, we're getting into this kind of, here's a close thing to it. Have you ever seen a cat that gets really angry at another cat? And, they both have their hair bristled up. They're trying to look bigger. And they're just, screeching at each other. And to a large degree, most of the time, they actually won't get into a fight. But one little thing can spark it off. And then you've got those cats rolling around in some sort of fur ball with claws. It looks like something from one of those old Tasmanian Devil Warner Brothers cartoon scenes. And this is something that we really have to guard against. I think that the election last year was an important issue, but let's not try to cloud it by making this into an anti-Russian hysteria. Okay? Yes, if you want to investigate, fine. People, let them investigate. It's just, it's just this idea, though, that there's a psychology that is very important to people, and that's called confirmation bias. And I've talked about it before, but we have a situation where, again, I'm going to go back to the witch trial thing. A person will throw something out into social media now, whether that be Twitter or Facebook or whatever. And then they'll make a claim. And it's not even a claim. If you actually read between the lines, if you actually read a lot of these articles, it'll say stuff like, well, we haven't found anything yet. Well, that implies that you're going to find something. All right? That's like if you go into a hospital and you've got a very, very sick friend, and you go to the doctor and says, is my friend okay? You know, if the doctor were to say, well, he's not dead yet, well, it's probably not going. It's probably going to give you the impression that you're not going to be going fishing with your friend anytime soon or ever, because the yet is a loaded word. It implies that something will be found, and there's a lot of cases of that out there in the press. There's a lot of cases of accusation. There's a lot of cases, where you ask a loaded question, such as, did Trump's campaign have a connection to Russia? And so forth. There are a lot of these kinds of headlines, and if you throw that into social media, if you just kind of toss it in there, it's like chumming. You're out there on the boat, and you pour that big old bucket of blood into the water, and you're out there trying to catch a shark. And the thing is that, let's say some sharks show up, and they start kind of going into that feeding frenzy, trying to find any little chunks of meat that you've thrown in. And this is what happens with social media. Now, I'm not saying this is something that just liberals do, okay? I think conservatives do it too. I think this is part of political psychology. But the thing is that when it comes to this issue, I just want to point out that this is what's happening. And, you wonder how much of our history is based on this. Because I'll guarantee you that in the future, you're going to have history books. They won't say that they won't say, though the Russians were, accused of this, but it wasn't true. They'll have something something about 2016, early 2017, that'll say, there were many people that brought up the possibility that Russia might have influenced the U.S. elections. And that will leave people with this idea that when they're talking about this, oh, maybe they did. And then a teacher, let's say in a classroom, maybe it's a history class, will say, can you find any articles that deal with this? And the students, since you are taught in school, I mean, I've been a debate coach before, I know how it works. You're taught, look for prestigious sources. Okay? You don't look for usually, you're not going to quote gossip magazines and stuff like that. You're going to find the prestigious ones. And, face it, in America today, the prestigious press would include, like, all of the big Eastern newspapers, some of the West Coast newspapers, and so forth. And so you'll have students in the future who probably will be saying, yeah, I found this article here, and I found this article, and I found this article. And they won't really realize that these articles had no validation. There was no real proof. And they will then go on to repeat this to where it will actually seep into not just high school textbooks, but it'll also seep into history books dealing with this period. And whether it's true or not, was it Napoleon who said history is just agreed upon fiction? So, George Orwell said that he who controls the past controls the future. Well, that is true, because the ideas that people have are what really control their behavior, including politics and so forth. And then they're going to be, you're going to get people in the future who will believe these, what I call conspiracy theories. And these conspiracy theories here I'm going to say this again, conspiracy theory. It has no proof. There are other conspiracy theories out there where at least you could find some evidence that could maybe point to something happening or not happening or whatever. But at least some of them have evidence. This is just hearsay. This is just someone saying, "Oh, well, this is the case because we believe it to be so." I'm sorry, just because you believe that something is so doesn't make it true, any more than believing that some of our political leaders are lizards or something like that makes it so. No more than believing that that we're all living in a matrix makes it so. Maybe we are living in a matrix. I don't know, but there's just as much proof for that as there is for this idea of the Russians. Now, tell me, where would it have stopped? Okay, there were a lot of Democrats that were elected in this election. Were they being helped by the Russians? I mean, they got elected. I mean, at what point would we stop at? Senators, congressmen, state officials, water board people? I mean, I don't mean waterboarding as in what they do at Gitmo as part of torture. I mean, the U.S. government. But I mean, people that just watch over the water policies of your community. But the thing is, I would tend to think that if you have a situation where before the election it was all like, Obama saying, no, there is no rigging of this election, there's no tampering, it's tamper-proof, and now, no, we got to retaliate. Now that's what scares me more than anything. We have to retaliate. And you have people in the Senate saying, well, this is an act of war. Well, again, it's, that's the belief equals action. And that's what I'm seeing is dangerous. I mean, the cybersecurity thing, yes, very important that countries maintain security. But at the same time, before the election, we were told that it was no big deal that Hillary was using a private server because no one could have gotten into it anyway and caused problems. No foreign countries. And now we hear that, Russia might have gotten into far more advanced computer systems. Oh, give me a break. Come on. I don't care about how people feel about the outcome of the election, but they should at least see the dangers in provoking a major superpower with nothing more than a set of unsubstantiated and I think downright absurd claims. Okay? So, anyway, like I said, everyone, watch out under your bed. There might be a Russian agent hiding there. You might have one out stealing cookies out of your cupboard, or taking that last piece of cake out of the refrigerator. And, it could just happen. Yes. Anyway, well, that's enough for the show tonight. And hope you'll all be back next week for another edition of Unlock the Door Radio.
This is JJ Against the Wall.